We may live over 8,500 miles from Lincoln Financial Field, but what we lack in proximity, we make up for in film study. And each and every week, we'll be bringing you in-depth film breakdowns from across the pond and the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane page. I'm your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined by BGN's own film guru, Jonny Page. Give him a follow on Twitter at JohnnyPage9. Jonny, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. I'm impressed you worked out the distance between where you are from London to Manchester. So the Brits have taken over today,
I just used your mileage twice, to be honest.
Oh God, you have no idea, do you?
Aren't you guys all like walking distance from each other?
Yeah,
it's a little island, right?
It's terrible. Apologies, Ollie. Got a lovely guest from Manchester. The Brits are taking over today. So yeah, I'm good. I'll let Ollie introduce himself in a second, but this is genuinely true. Whenever we have guests, we always say nice things because, you know, guests, they're always wonderful. But I sent Ollie the smallest rundown of all time for today because I probably trust his opinion. And I mean this, Ollie, more than anyone, especially for draft stuff in particular these days. We always talk about trying to support local work. And I think the Read Optional, your Substack, is the longest I've subscribed to any single one. Unfortunately, you've hooked me now because I can't get the podcast outside of it, so I'm screwed. So yeah, I don't subscribe to as many as I should because there's so many out there. But I remember, Ollie, when you wrote about like 4 Strong like 4 years ago, and ever since then I've been just obsessed with like spotting 4 Strong. And I know recently you spoke about linebackers and blitzing, and I genuinely, Ollie's articles, the only problem is they're too long. So he's a very, very smart guy. So this could last a while, but this is cool. This is why having a podcast is awesome, because I wish I could ask Ollie just about the Eagles more. Because he covers a league whole, and now I get today just to grill him basically and find out anything I want to check my own homework and see how things are going. He's also, of course, published you published the book of Fangio, didn't you, a few years ago with Sean Syed, which is like...
I did.
Just the most important reading basically of all time. So yeah, I've been subscribed to you for years, so it's awesome to get you here. And he's a fellow Brit, Shane. So we outnumber you guys 2-1 for the first time ever on the show. Probably the last time ever as well. I can't think of another.
Are you already suggesting this show's not going to be worth inviting Ollie back for a repeat encore performance down the road? I mean, come on.
Yeah, very true. He's an important man. And yes, as Krabby's already shouted out, it's a hell of a background, isn't it? He's beat me here with a background thing with the guitars and the Beatles, and I've got a straight white wall behind me. But anyway, Ollie, I'll even shoot yourself very quickly. Tell us about yourself, how you got into it. I've already mentioned your Substack, the Read Optional, but for anyone who's not aware of your work, give me a very, very...
how do I do a brief introduction of myself? I don't know. I write about football. I was a scout for 6, 7, 8 years. What is time at this point? I worked at Western Michigan. I worked for a bunch of different scouting services for the NFL draft. I am a complete windbag, as Jonny mentioned, both in my writing and then the podcast I do, which runs to 2.5 hours each time. I have maybe the strangest British accent on account of living in Boston for 3 years and my wife being American and her now having a really strange Mancunian Georgia accent and me having a strange Georgia Mancunian accent of my own. So that, I guess, is the general background.
There you go.
All right. Well, this is, pro tip, if there's like a really good content creator that covers a whole sport and you wish they talked about your team more, just invite them on your show and then you can ask them whatever you want to. So we want to pick Ollie's brain and dive into, some Eagles offense and defense things, the Jalen Hurts discussion, and just kind of talk about general things to watch for around the league. But as we discussed before the show, Jonny, Ollie's not on social media, and so he's not aware of the current Jalen Hurts discussion. So why don't you fill in those gaps for him? It's a wonderful discourse.
Yes, really good discourse, Ollie. I'm sure you're missing out.
Is this going to hurt my heart? Is this going to really hurt me?
Well, I don't know. So I don't actually, to be honest, Ollie, and this is a weird thing, but I don't read a lot of Eagles content. So I probably follow you more for whole NFL stuff. Obviously, around the Super Bowl and stuff, I was listening to you and John in the playoffs. But I'd probably say I know your opinion about the Eagles less than other teams, which is quite stupid. Because I cover the Eagles and talk about the Eagles, and to an extent, I almost don't want to know what other people think a lot of the time as well, or you end up just repeating stuff you hear, don't you? So I guess of late, it's been the classic old school. It's like QB ranking season, and we'll talk more about the Eagles offense in a bit, but just in general, I guess we'll start with Hurts. And then we were lucky enough to have James Foster on the show about a month ago, and we had some really good footage. He got access to footage from Hurts from 2020. And it made you realise actually just how far he's come as a QB. And you're a draft guy as well, so I'm sure you remember if at the time you were watching Hurts come out as well. And I guess the discourse has been, and I'm interested in your own thoughts, and I'm not going to make you rank QBs because I hate that stuff, and I know you hate all that kind of jazz as well because it's completely irrelevant. But there's been a lot of rankings that have Hurts maybe significantly lower than where Eagles fans would appreciate him. And I think Hurts has a number of flaws, which we don't need to get into in huge amounts. But I guess just to start like a big picture, like how do you assess Hurts' development over time, and how do you look at the Eagles offense with Hurts at the helm these days? Do you look at it as a major position of strength? Do you appreciate, because I basically have a personal bugbear where I think people are too quick to point out things he doesn't do well, throws over the middle of the field, for example, rather than focus on the number of strengths he does bring to the team. And I think it's difficult because the Eagles offense is so talented with Saquon, obviously AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, the offensive line being that good. So how do you, as an analyst, how do you go about like trying to judge Jalen Hurts considering the talent around the Eagles? And how much, I guess, of the Eagles offense do you think is because of what Jalen Hurts does rather than him just being a small part of it?
Yeah, I think the big picture design of the offense can only roll because of the way he is built and his skills, which is like downhill vertical runner who can rip it down the field outside the numbers as well as anyone in the league. Last year that waned dramatically. That to me is the major area of growth he's had from college to the pros, where even in college he was kind of a dump or pump quarterback, as I call him, which is either like it's like quick game underneath or I'm letting it fly down the field. And he became to me one of the best throw to leverage quarterbacks down the field in the NFL, which is like just ever so subtly changing the radar of the release down the field to put it in a spot depending on where the cornerback is, depending on where the leverage is, just putting it in the right position every time. I thought that fell off so poorly during the regular season last year, and then was like miraculously back in the postseason out of nowhere. And I think with him, and I don't want to speak for the discourse, but if I had to guess why people kind of view him that way, would be he does a lot of the stuff at a B+ level, and there's people who do that stuff at an A+ level. Like each individual skill set, right? Downfield runner, Josh Allen's better at that. Downfield bombers, people who are better than that. So I think it's just like, well, by each individual trait that makes him the player he is, there's someone slightly better at it or maybe significantly better at it. And therefore you overlook some of the other stuff. And then it highlights some of the minutiae that I do think is a problem. Some of the rhythm game stuff, some of the footwork stuff, some of the mechanics, the speed with which he plays, that kind of a light gets shined on that because you're looking for something he's maybe the best at or in the top 3 at, because he might not be that in the other areas that are truly his strengths.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. I've never considered the fact that, is there anything he does, even mobility these days, even out of structure stuff, he's not Lamar as a runner. He's not Jaden Daniels as a runner. What would you say, just a big picture, like, and I know we spoke about middle of the field, you mentioned footwork there, like, is there anything major glaring in his game these days? Because is there anything you see as like a real hindrance? I know the middle of the field stuff sort of obvious, but do you want to expand on that, or is there anything else in particular that you think he still needs to work on?
I think the middle of the field stuff is tied to the rhythm issues. That it's hard to get the ball into the middle of the field. It's where the most bodies are. It's the really high degree of difficulty throws. If you are not in flow with the offense, with the receivers, with the play design, it's hard to cram the ball in there, particularly if you have a hiccup in your release. And he was just hiccuping all the time last season. You go back to 2022 and the thing was just a machine. The sequencing of the offense, the design of the offense, where he fit in that. It was like everything that was great about him, right, was put into the offense, and it just so happened that everything that was great about everyone else fit that so cohesively. That was kind of like what made it so special. That, to me, was just gone last season. He was so slow in everything he did all the time, not just the reading stuff, actually, like, the footwork, the mechanics was just really lackadaisical. His movement in the pocket, really lackadaisical. There's just hiccups all the time, to the point where he would stand in, and he's got this kind of, which I fall for these quarterbacks all the time. Geno Smith is like that, where they have this like kind of crank pendulum delivery, right? Where they just kind of rock and roll and let the ball go, rather than it being all within the feet and the hips and the snap to it. I fall for those guys, but he would have this like pendulum swing and hold the swing back. And if you go to the Cleveland game, where I thought he played okay, there's about 4 or 5 times where by holding the ball longer mid release, essentially. He allows guys into his lap. So it's impossible to build a rhythm offense if the guy is not getting the ball out on time, right? If it's 3 and go, we're 3 and go, no conversation. And so it's really difficult to attack the middle of the field if your guy is not playing on time and in rhythm. And with that, it's not just the out of rhythm stuff and the creativity in the backfield you're kind of talking to there, the second reaction plays, which again returned at least in the Super Bowl, if not in the postseason. His just feel in a muddy pocket is different than it used to be. He does not have, he's kind of in this weird halfway house where these guys who hit this stick slide climb throw, which is like the throw in the NFL, particularly when you rip it to the middle of the field. That's how you kind of picture Brady, Goff, Rodgers, all the guys. Hit the back foot, slide away from the pass rush, climb up in the pocket, release it in one shot. Goff and Brady have this real like flow and ballet to how they do it, right? Rodgers, Jackson, the more explosive guys, they can just kind of leap from launch point to launch point and get the ball out really quick. He's in this like weird middle ground where he's not quite agile enough to kind of plant off one foot, leap to another spot and let it go. And then he's so slow in the delivery at the top of the drop. He doesn't really have this like natural flow to his game. So when you just go and watch their quick game cut up, it's never in time. It's just not crisp enough. It's not snappy enough. And that was fine in 2022 when it was not so rhythm-based. Last year, they were trying to be rhythm-based, at least for the first 9 weeks of the season. And so everything just felt like everyone was out of sync with one another.
Yeah, I remember yelling about the offense a lot early last year and how Kellen Moore was trying to run an offense for Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert instead of an offense for Jalen Hurts. And that's been one of my biggest – and I continued to yell about it, honestly, even down the backside of the season. It's like the thing I just yelled about all the time was backside timing routes. Like, he's never going to get to that. Just run a guy across the field. Like, do something else, but – stop running backside comebacks and curl routes. He's never.
That's what's wild with him is if you just ran a true ISO offense, he's given AJ Brown one of the great luxuries of life that any human could have. I get AJ Brown. What a joy! If you're Mrs. Brown, that's great. For anyone else, it's an amazing time to be alive. I think he may be the all-around best player in the league. You just go skill by skill for his position. He might be the very best. No one stops him on press. No one. So all you need every time is backside slant, as you're saying, Shane. It's like, well, we'll just build the play this way. We'll go backside slant. If we don't like it in a flash, we just look at the rotation instantly. We throw it to AJ every time. It's just an alert. How many times does Steichen do that? You cannot stop AJ Brown off the press, and you can't tackle him because he's a bowling ball. This seems like a pretty good situation to be in. And then we get the shot stuff, and they changed, as you guys will know more than anyone, they changed Brown's receiver profile when he got to Philly, which was quick game and we'll just take the shots when we want to. They kind of removed the intermediate portion of the field where he is, again, dominant, but it was kind of unnecessary because his skills are so good and they married with Hurts so well on those two simple things that kind of down the field stuff is where they connect best. But you get this get out of jail free card that Kellen, who is someone I have my own beefs with, was just kind of refusing to acquiesce to last season.
I remember when they went and got AJ Brown, talking about how like we will now find out if Hurts is going to be able to throw over the middle of the field because AJ Brown's one of the best slant and dig runners in the NFL, and they just never really even tried, and that always really confused me. And now we're so far away from it. Like it's been a couple of years now in this offense, and everybody's like AJ Brown's one of the best deep threats in the NFL, and it's like he is. But also, like I feel like we've forgotten about how good he is on the slants and the digs and things like that over the middle.
Yeah, Ollie, this is terrible because it's basically going to be a podcast / interview at this point because we're going to grill you, as you can probably tell. But I'd normally prepare people, but I know how much you know and I respect you. So I was going to bring up Kellen Moore, even though I didn't tell you I was going to. So we struggled, like both me and Shane, because Kellen Moore had such a good sort of resume. I think people we watched a lot of the Chargers stuff and we liked it, but Herbert and Dak are probably two of the best processors in the league by a significant distance. And that's very hard then when you hire the guy because I think quarterbacks can make coaches look good, can't you? If you call a play and Dak Prescott figures it out pre-snap, it's hard to look.
Helpful.
It's hard to look bad, isn't it? And I've got my own bugbears with Dak. Of course, I'm an Eagles fan, but I don't think anyone's doubting his processing, just how clean it is, and Herbert's as well. So we found the offense really weird because, as you said, like I think people forget Hurst was just so out of sync. Like, it just looked weird. And you mentioned Shane was going on. I mean, Shane, you hated quick game as well. You were killing the Eagles quick game.
I hated the Eagles quick game for sure.
Yeah, the Eagles quick game was horrible. It felt like there were so many like 3-step drops with 2x2, pick a side. That side's not open. Oh, crap. What do we do now? And the playoffs was the worst when they played, who was it, the Rams and Stafford in the whatever, divisional. And it was rough. And then we basically, the whole Eagles media just went mental. Like, what is going on? Like, I remember Shane, we had a very popular week breaking down how many things were poor with the offense. And then with the Washington game, it sort of clicked. And there was so much more, and I don't want to say basic, you can call it basic if you want, college, but a lot more like half-field reads, a lot of things that were just all in his line of vision. So things like sail concepts where Hurts, it's very easy to read. He throws a brilliant deep out to Dallas Goedert. You know he can throw it down the field. And it felt like Kellen Moore was just trying to do stuff throughout the year. And there was a part of me that wondered, you know what, maybe it's short-term pain for long-term gain. They're trying to develop Hurts so he gets good at this stuff. And then there was another part of me that was like, I don't think Hurts needs to be good at that stuff. I think the way the Eagles offense is constructed now, when you've got the running game, and that's where I think the criticism comes, is people want, and I guess I struggle with people who want Hurts to be more than he is. And I'm like, but does he need to be? They just won the Super Bowl with him playing in a very specific way. So did you find, and I'm not going to ask for your whole opinion on Kellen Moore right now, but did you find the offense quite tough to watch at times? Because I felt like I was going a bit mad sometimes because, I'm not a former scout like yourself, Ollie, and I'll be honest, my mantra is always coaches know a lot, and I hate doubting coaches in general because there's a lot of idiots online that shout stuff like they're clueless, and they're obviously not. And Kellen Moore obviously knows what he's doing. It just felt to me like philosophically it didn't match. And worse than that, it felt like it wasn't necessary. Like they were making winning harder than it had to be. And you don't want to sound like the guy in the pub who just goes like run the ball and throw it deep, but it felt like there were things the Eagles could do that were just a lot more simplistic, that didn't require Hurts. And I think Hurts just got a bit frazzled, in all honesty. I think he then started just missing layups because he wasn't trusting what he was seeing. So yeah, you mentioned Kellen Moore, but what did you think of the construction of the offense last year? Like, did you find it difficult to watch?
I think the frazzle part too has a lot to do with Kelsey leaving, not in terms of changing what they did, but changing the responsibilities involved. There's way more on his plate in a way he hadn't had before. So now you're dealing with all the protections and you're dealing with changing the run game, which you'd never had to do before in terms of resetting the run game to different fronts. Now all of a sudden I've got to check and try something different. I'm running this offense I don't like. Like I can see why he would get frazzled doing that. My kind of general beef with Kellen Moore, which I think bore out last season, and it's hard to kind of pull apart who was involved with what, right? But all these staffs are built differently. They had a passing game coordinator. Some staffs now they have a guy who sets the third down plan. You know, the different coaches orchestrate different elements of the offense. The OC is either builds the game plan or ties it together. And we got Sirianni in the fold, and who knows exactly what his responsibility is. Probably changes week to week as it does with most of these head coaches who are involved in game planning the offense to some extent. My main beef with Moore for a while now, I think most like, whatever you call it, film Twitter, whatever we call it these days, I don't know what it's called. You said him on social media. He was kind of like the hot shot guy, right, for a long time, particularly in Dallas, because he does interesting stuff. The formations look interesting, the motions look interesting, but to me, he falls into the category of ego coach. And those are the guys that really frustrate me, which is whiteboard stuff to satiate my ego, to show everyone how smart I am, to go and get a head coaching job with the Saints, rather than building a cohesive structure that fits the players and the roster I have, or calling the right play at the right time for what we sequenced and built into the offense, the way Shane Steichen did. Shane Steichen was not an ego coach, even though he has a larger ego in person than Kellen Moore does. But the coaching was not egotistical. The coaching was, I'll go get the head coaching gig if I build, probably to me, structurally, the best offense the past 10 years. The one Shane Steichen built, based on where macro trends were with defenses and the personnel he had at his disposal. That to me was better even than the Hill, Kelsey, Andy Reid, like the tailoring and structuring of the offense and the calling and design of the offense. So for me, with Moore, I'm watching it going, a lot of this stuff doesn't fit together. You guys will have gone through all the numbers in like the first quarter, right? Just disastrous offense in the first quarter for like 12 weeks of the season. And people say to you, oh, you know, they're trying to gather intel. That's what they do early on. That was not what they were doing. That was not what they did. They ran the same stuff all the time into a brick wall. And you can see, I think, a pretty clear point in the season when they start to pull it back and say, let's return to some of the old stuff we used to do. Let's get to some of the stuff we're more comfortable with. And one thing, I don't want to set Jonny any homework here, but I think it's worth investigating if you cover the Eagles. You go and watch them against the Commanders the first time and the second time. I know they beat the brakes off them in the playoff game. And you watch the Panthers game. I think people very clearly had all their signals. I think it's really obvious because you can watch them. The difference in when they do a check or a kill call from run to pass, and it's hard to figure this stuff out from the outside, right? Everyone's got dummy calls and all this stuff. But you can see when they do a full check, full reset, and Jalen's doing his signs to the receivers, and you can see that they've changed the play up. people sit on absolutely everything they do. Even when they're crushing the Commanders, all those TFLs in the first half come off him completely changing the play. So I don't think Kellen's changed his signals for a long, long time, and everyone had a real beat on what they were running. And I just think the guy has a real feel that he's going to be the person to decide the game, that he, by design, will figure the game out more so than it is I'm going to build an offense for these specific players, which would be, as Shane mentioned, let's maybe get Brown involved in things that help AJ Brown where he's at his best. Let's maybe build an offense that is best for Jalen Hurts. Even in the Super Bowl, there was a bunch of stuff that was like, that was for Kellen Moore. That was Kellen Moore on a Super Bowl stage calling a Super Bowl offense saying, I'm going to put my own show on, as opposed to things that were built specifically to the guys he inherited.
Yeah, the Eagle, to your point, in the first quarter, throughout the entire regular season, the Eagles' offense ranked 24th in the league in EPA per play. And I forget what the numbers were after that. I could look them up, but I know they were very high in like quarters 2 through 4. I should have looked
they
those up while
they
you were
became
talking.
like the best offense in the league after halftime.
Yeah.
And this was
Yeah.
not halftime adjustments. They ran the same offense. They just played better. The run game ground people down. But
Shane, can you remember? So pre-season, we did we stole the idea off Coach Dan Casey. Like we watched the whole drive, and we did a couple of Kellen Moore where we just watched because obviously you watch a lot of highlights and stuff, but we just basically watched a 15-play drive or something. And there was like 2 or 3 like wacky plays in there.
Yeah.
And the big thing we spoke about was like, why did you do this? There was one that was, what was the one that was utterly bizarre, Shane? It was
the reverse. It was a reverse pass turned into a tight end screen.
Yeah, and it was and they were like, the drive was going so well, it was so unnecessary. And I remember we both highlighted it thinking, and I've never heard the phrase ego coach, but I know you mentioned it before actually yourself, but I love the idea of, that's probably true for what Kellen Moore is actually. And
that's true for
a
lot of coaches.
He got the head coaching gig.
And he's had this big kind of online media persona as the young innovative guy.
Yeah.
And he does come up with a lot of innovative stuff. And I'm not here to bash the designs necessarily. He has Dan Casey in the building. He followed Dan Casey on social media, getting all these fun plays from all over the world, and was like, why didn't you come in the building? Because that's how he views the game. Get me the coolest designs possible. And that's great. I'm all for cool designs. Andy Reid has some of the coolest. Andy Reid has guys surfing through film from Japan to go and find plays. He looks through high school football. Seriously, one guy in staff, Mike Kafka, that used to be his job in Kansas City. He's now an assistant head coach of the NFL. He used to watch Japanese football to find plays for Andy Reid. That's great stuff. It's the knowing when to call it. Is it tied together? And a lot of Kellen's stuff, the idea is to have a payoff play. They make it look, smell, feel like everything else you run, so that then people don't know it's coming and you can pay it off. To me, it feels like he's got a counter in his head, like, well, after 8, I get 1. It's like the old film thing, like 1 for them, 1 for me. Most coaches are like, well, it's like 35 for the players, 1 for me. I feel like Kellen's in like the 8-to-1 ratio, which to me is just off.
Yeah, I looked those up. It was first quarter for the entire season, the Eagles offense ranked 24th in EPA per play. In quarters 2 through 4, they ranked 3rd in the NFL in EPA per play.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it?
It was crazy just how, I mean, watching games, it was like, why don't we just, like, first play of the game, let's just punt the ball and get that off our back, and then let's go play football after that. At one point, I looked up, like, the average points per opening drive for the Eagles on the season, because I think they only scored, like, 1 opening drive touchdown in the regular season. It's just crazy.
For a team that won the Super Bowl and destroyed Spags' defense in the first half as well is bizarre. And there's good comment from Yakko as well.
There was good stuff in there. I want to make that. There was good stuff. There was a lot of like the general trends I write about a lot that I think teams should be embracing. They are always a year, 2 years to the race before everyone else. A lot of the pistol work, excellent stuff. You see that pay off in the Super Bowl a ton with them getting into the pistol, particularly against Spags. That's like probably the easiest formula you can get to try and discombobulate Spags. They get the huge touchdown shot to Devonta Smith is off a pistol play action shot. So there was a lot of good stuff in there, but I felt just watching it, you could feel the tension of like 5 different voices in the room building a game plan. If it was maybe just Kellen's, it could be a different situation. But I think for me personally, worse, it would have looked like, hey, I'm going to try and do what I did with Dak. Dak is a supercomputer of a quarterback, as you mentioned, Jonny. Jalen just hasn't proven to be that guy yet. Maybe it could have looked like that, maybe not. But I just felt you could see the tension between all the different voices in the building.
Yeah, and it's funny because we forget. I mean, as I said, we covered the team. So Yakko have a good comment about there was a efficiency jump after AJ's comment. There was a lot of disgruntled Eagles faces in the first half of the season. So I think you're right about just how many different people there were. You forget when you're covering a team, but when you think back, Shane, there was a lot of disgruntled members in the media. There was a lot of anger. There was rumours of players falling out and this and that. And even I think the running game's fascinating because, I mean, that's weird, isn't it? When you're someone like Kellen Moore going somewhere where you basically have a run game coordinator in Stoutland who does it all for you must be quite tough as well. Because Kellen Moore wants to tie a bunch of his passing game concepts to his running game. And then it's like, well, actually, we don't really want to sit under centre and run outside zone because that's not really how we do things here.
But they would do it like 3 times a game and everyone knew exactly what was coming. It was very,
bizarre.
Very and then he's got a passing game coordinator. Then he's got a third down coordinator. He's probably looking at Nick's in charge of the offense. So he's probably thinking, what is my job here? Weekly? I'll come up with the fun plays, shall I? And I'll call those 1 and 8.
Yeah, the under-centre stuff was bizarre. It seemed to only work when Ben Van Sumeren was occasionally there for about the few weeks. And then the rest of the time, it was just an utter train wreck. And it's obvious that Stoutland wanted to do shotgun, read option, pin pull stuff. Like, it was so... They seemed so... and we said the second they hired Kellen Moore, that was going to be the thing that I was more interested to see is how they were going to tie the two together. And it did feel like they never really...
Even the things that make Kellen, which is all the motion and shifting, but he's not a motion guy in the sense like Mike McDaniel is. It's not to overload the point of attack or to shift the leverage. It's to fully kind of reset the formation, right? That's what he's doing. That's why he shifts more than he motions off them. And you go and watch them play, and then you go through some of the figures. Like, that just isn't how Jalen Hurts chose to play, even within the confines of that offense. They were 29th in the league in targeting the motion man. They barely ran jet motion. They ran it in the run game. They did not run it in the pass game. So the thing he's in charge of, he's like, well, I don't want to do that. So now you've got these 2 completely different siloed offenses. As you mentioned, Jonny, of like, one team is running this in the run game. I'm doing this in the passing game. I actually don't design the passing game. Someone else does that. So I'm going to call the plays, but I'm going to put my shift and motion in. It was just really off. And even the run game stuff, it's to just kind of adjust the box count slightly and try and get a different lane for Saquon. And that stuff did work, but it was just not all tied together the way it used to be. And that to me was kind of the disappointment when you go back and watch it.
2 things. So, the under center point, it was like, we're going to run under center 4 times a game. And 3 of them will be run plays, but the first play of the second half will be a play action max
Always
protect bomb.
Always.
And then I remember talking about in film stuff during the season, like the Eagles' motions didn't accomplish anything because so often they would send a guy in motion and he just releases to the flat like 6 yards behind or 9 yards behind the line of scrimmage because he had to get behind the quarterback when he went into motion, and they do like the orbit motion stuff, but it was never for a purpose in the passing game. And so I remember at one point, like, that had been the thing people had talked about for years. The Eagles needed to use more motion, and I was finally like, just stop using motion. You're just you're just wasting a receiver. Like, you're putting him in a position that he's no threat whatsoever. Just have him run a go route instead. Like, it would do more to stress the defense because everybody knew, like, we're not throwing to the orbit motion guy. We're not gonna. And so it just, like you said, it became very siloed. There was motion for a purpose in the run game, and then there was motion just to motion because we can't only motion on run plays in the pass game.
I mean, this is beautiful. Jonny, he's speaking my language here. Jonny probably knows this well. Like, the pointlessness of motion and motion being a stand-in amongst media members for good offense, modern offense. Tell me what the point of the motion. They show a generic motion rate. What is the point of the motion? Please show me. And Shay nailed it. You go watch the run game. There is great point to their motion. Did it always work? No. And did they tip that they were running the ball off their motion every single time? Let me tell you. Every single time. It was so not tied to the rest of the offense. Did it matter? No. We've got 5 unbelievable players we can all pull. We've got a quarterback running threat. We got Saquon Barkley. 1 miss, we hit a home run. Doesn't matter. That's the point of the motion, is to get Saquon Barkley hitting home runs. It was not tied to anything else. In the passing game, they are motioning not to adjust strength. They're not really motioning to change leverage. And it's really hard to have a motion-based passing game if your quarterback refuses to throw in rhythm. You basically take away the advantage of the motion point. So what becomes the point of our motion? I'd rather just set up and go and let him declare where everyone's going to be early so he can decide what he wants to do in 4 seconds when he's under pressure. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, can you remember I know I'm angry you get. I'm the same when it's just like, oh, there's a list of motion in the NFL. 67%, therefore he's good. 54%, not good. It's like, it's the most just, it's mad. Everything we're saying is that they went and won the Super Bowl by absolutely battering the Super Bowl champions and in the conference game. But yeah, there were a lot of, we should probably move on from Kellen Moore at some point.
I think it's exciting for the future, honestly, because I felt watching it, there was a lot of good stuff in there still. And just so much meat left on the bones. It was like 30% of the offense they had in 2022. I know they waxed Spags in that game too, by the way. Should have won
Oh
that
my
one.
God, that was Hurts' best performance ever. The Super Bowl they lost.
Yeah, and the second best performance is probably the Super Bowl he won. So he was absolutely nails under pressure again. So there's just so much meat left there. It would have me really fired up. And I did think it was interesting that I'm sure you guys cover the team when Moore left, people were throwing names around who's going to get the job and people go chasing big name stuff. I think keeping it in the building, just removing one voice of what felt like one voice too many in the decision making, I thought was a sensible choice.
I was going to transition onto that, Shane. Sorry, did you want to talk any more? Or should we transition into this year very briefly?
Yeah, so 2 questions. One, I just got to ask Ollie because I dug this stat up and it's one of my favorites. But Mark mentioned the motion into wide receiver screens where Devontae was the lone blocker, drove him crazy. Ollie, I went back and looked. In the last 10 seasons, I looked at screen pass success rates. So out of 320 total teams, where do you think the Eagles ranked in screen pass success rate in 2024?
Oh, it's got to be in the bottom 40.
318th out of 320.
With that talent, with like an offensive line that can all run.
Yeah. And AJ Brown, who cannot be tackled on first contact. So that's 3 yards. We already got those.
Yeah. But the other question I wanted to ask is you talked about how siloed the run and the pass game were, and you've got a run game coordinator and you've got a pass game coordinator and all these things, and how Kellen Moore played into it being so siloed. With the way the Eagles coaching staff is structured, do you think there is an offensive coordinator that can come in and sort of unify that into where it doesn't feel like there's 3 different guys in charge of 3 different aspects and can really unify the offense into one cohesive thing?
Yeah, probably when Shane Steichen gets bulleted in week 6, I would imagine would be really. He comes back as a consultant probably for the final 10 weeks of the season. I think it'll start really rolling well. It's really not that all the staffs are built this way now. This isn't like a unique setup, right? Sean McVay is considered like the doyen of the Rams offense. He doesn't build the game plan. He doesn't even call the plays half the time anymore. He has a third down guy who calls third downs. It should be fairly easy to do when your head coach is an offensive guy. He's going to build out the staff in the way that has the most continuity. The point of the sequencing of the offense is to get the run game, the RPO game to all look the same so you can get the play action shots. So you're not just investing in the run game for run game's sake, that you invest in it to be able to crack the ball over people's head, and the play action game looks identical to the run game. The presentation, the look, the smell, the feel. And when you have an offense where all 5 guys pull, and you have this unbelievable opportunity with these kind of lead running back pull plays that no one else in the league can even consider unfurling, except for maybe the Cardinals, where you have a genuine weapon at running back as a lead blocker. Bizarre. And anyone else can pull and lead as well. Bizarre. No one else can even get close to that. And your quarterback can take off. This stuff is not difficult. That Shane Steichen offense I'm talking about was not a difficult, like, beautiful design by, like, the plays. There was none of those, like, plays from the Japanese league in there at the time. It was just all great stuff crafted for the personnel. So it to me should be the easiest offense for someone to be able to sequence together, because you so naturally flow from option read to Saquon to option read to the slide package they used to have, which was the most indefensible package in all of football when they had and the slide stuff, just completely indefensible. They roll into that, you roll that into a play action shot, you roll that into your drop back game. It should be really, really easy to put together.
Yeah, right. I was going to ask you about the Eagles' offense this year, but I guess you sort of covered it. But just quickly before we flip over to the defense, you mentioned it. I think fans are going to be fans, aren't they? They always want the next big name, and then they went for Kevin Patullo, who was already in the building. Any particular thoughts, or is it basically what you said, the idea that they've just removed the voice and you expect it to be similar, but maybe a little bit less cooks in the kitchen, or whatever they say?
Yeah, I don't think it will be similar. I think it'll be similar by design, maybe structure, but I think that there's definitely going to be more tempo involved. And Patullo, when he was with the Jets, they built one of the best empty packages in the league. I mean, that team stunk, but they built one of the best empty sets in the league. And that is something I would really like to see them try with more. I know it's difficult and weird for fans to hear because they got Saquon Barkley. It's like, why would we remove Saquon Barkley from the backfield? Well, he can go and play elsewhere. You can reload the formation. They tried that stuff in the Super Bowl. It was really effective, right? You put Saquon in the slot, you reload it if you want to, if the look isn't what you want. But getting to empty, I think, would help Jalen Hurts a lot. Up in the tempo, I think, would help a lot. You go and see as I said, these guys have been 2 years ahead of everyone else. Okay, I felt last year they were at stasis last season compared to the rest of the league. They were doing a lot of stuff they've done before. You look at where the other teams are going, and we're saying, okay, we're pushing ahead to what it's going to look like in 2 years. It's a lot of empty. It's a lot of no huddle. It's a lot of getting big personnel on the field and then getting empty with your big personnel. That to me would, I think, help them out. Teams are moving so much on the back end. Teams are moving so much in the front. The only thing you can pray to do as an offense right now is say, can we get these guys to stop just for a breath? Give us a second where you guys aren't moving all over the place. The easiest way to do that is to get into empty. You just instantly slim down the menu of pressures available. It's harder to move. Everyone has to declare. And if you get to it, because you have a guy like Saquon who can line up in the backfield, then you kick him out. One, everyone panics. Those guys are now panicking, even though they're all mugged up. And two, they all are going to have an instant check. Instantly. Because it's just what's going to be the default. If Saquon goes, we default. And you'll know that in 3 plays. You'll instantly figure out the default. And then you can go attack the thing. So when you have an offense where you can have all 5 guys as a threat as a puller, Jalen can run. And the thing you're trying to do, as you mentioned earlier, Jonny, is can we maybe get him some more predefined stuff in the offense where he's not reading 1 through 5 all the time? It would seem to me to make the most sense to up the empty amount. And they just barely got into it last season, honestly, until the postseason. Maybe they were saving it. I doubt it because there were criticisms at the midpoint of the season. And the no-huddle stuff, they only ran 19 snaps of no-huddle last season in an even game state. That's just shocking. The Commanders were at 218 in an even game state last year, and they really cranked it to the max. They had a rookie and all that stuff. But to me, those are 2 things that are already in the offense. They showed it in the Super Bowl at its best. It's just kind of cranking that up, I think, to the next level.
Yeah, you've already jumped onto the empty chat. We might get back to it later because I was going to talk about schematic trends, and I wanted to talk about Bryce Young very briefly with you. We'll pull that for a little bit later though. Shane, what are you going to say? Sorry.
I was just going to say you can do the inverse of that too. You can come out and empty and then motion Saquon into the backfield and watch defenses freak out. You can motion him into the background and run a read option where you're snapping him already in motion or a play action. Like there's so many things you can build off of that. I've loved empty for years, and there was a time the Eagles used it a lot.
We're really good at
it, and they were really good at it, and it kind of faded down the stretch. And I remember talking about Washington last year and the way they were using empty to simplify things for Jaden Daniels and isolate guys out in space. And I loved that they were doing that. And so that'd be a very welcome change to the offense as well. So
before they had the tush push, outside of the slide package, which was the most indefensible thing in football, I'll repeat that until I die. The second most indefensible thing was their single man power game with Kelsey from empty. It was like Jason will pull. He's quicker than everyone else in the league off the snap, and Jalen will follow him behind. And he's a downhill threat who can run over the first person that he meets. Yeah,
not to mention that you have the QB run game out of empty. It's impossible. It is impossible to defend the Eagles in empty when you can run Jalen Hurts downhill against light boxes, and against heavier boxes you can take one-on-one shots to AJ Brown and to Devontae Smith. Like there's so many things that you can do out of it. I think it's utterly indefensible.
The question with it, I guess,
QB hits.
As mentioned, Jalen, is how much he wants to do it at this stage of his career.
Yeah,
what is that comment? And what is his involvement now in the offense? The guy's paid an awful lot of money. I'm sure he likes to have a say. And is he one of those guys? And a lot of these guys have been. Cam Newton was like this towards the end of his career. Let's maybe save that for the postseason. That really hurts. There's a lot of ice baths during the season. Maybe that is what they did last year when they unloaded it more in the postseason. I'm not quite so sure, but I would like to at least see it for maybe 5-6 weeks. And then maybe we can put it on ice for a little bit, bring it back later in the year.
I think there is a legitimate argument for that as well. Was it the Frankie Louvu hit that injured him? Was that from empty, or was that just a standard read option run? I think he might have been from empty, but I can't remember. But Hurts did get injured, obviously, with a concussion against Frankie Louvu, who likes to hit.
Especially after quarterback slide.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that you've got to weigh up, haven't you, philosophically, I guess, when you run that stuff.
Just don't do it against the Commanders.
Yeah, or Frankie Louvu, because he's incredibly good as well, to be fair, as well as being a little bit aggressive.
Ollie keeps mentioning the Eagles slide package. Literally one of the first all-22 videos I ever posted on YouTube was titled "The Eagles Have a Money Play," and it was like 6 different instances of them running that slide package differently. Like 4 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, it's mad I didn't do it more. Right, we're going to have to move on because I said it's going to be a long one because I know what Ollie's like and I know what we're like when we talk to someone as well.
This might be a 2-parter for the podcast feed.
Oh, God. Yeah, let's transition, Ollie. Let's talk about the defense. I mean, unbelievably good last year. I won't ask you to go into too much detail on how much you enjoy Fangio on the defense, but like, I guess big picture, let's start like sort of philosophically, like how surprised were you by how good they were down the stretch? Because they were good last year and then they were just exceptionally good. And it felt like they were running like the Fangio defense almost at like its highest level towards the end of the year. Like, how impressive was it to watch, and how were you surprised at all, or were you not at all surprised that Fangio got it together within 1 year?
Not surprised by the end of the season when I saw like him make a switch, and I was like, okay, they've hit on this. And the thing that really was just like, I cannot believe this is happening at the pro level, is that they just look quicker than everyone else. And I know that sounds really basic. You don't see that in the NFL. You don't see it where you have, I think, the two most punishing linebackers now, because Fred Warner's not quite hitting the way he used to, neither is Bobby Wagner, on the same team together, giving you the most fearsome duo by like a factor of 4. That they just hit harder than everyone else. And I know, again, it sounds really basic. They were quicker than everyone else. They hit harder than everyone else. And you saw in the Packers playoff game, a team just tap out. They were like, we are not as athletic as these guys. There's nothing we can do. And every time that we try and run, they're quicker to the ball than us, and they hit harder than anyone's ever hit us before. That, to me, was like, I just don't know how you could make that happen. Not just overnight, but like assemble a roster where you look so much more athletic than everyone else in the NFL. In terms of it being like his masterpiece, obviously, I don't think anyone saw the Zach Bourne thing coming, and he just completely unlocked it to a degree.
He didn't see it coming. He thought he was playing edge. He didn't see it coming. I read the quotes. He thought he was playing edge, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, only one man, I guess, which was Vic, which is part of what makes him such a genius. Their ability to move their front in a way no one else could really match in the league, to just give them always a +1 count, essentially whenever they wanted, plus then having the rookies play the level they did, where how tied together the linebacker core was with the coverage. I've not seen anyone do that at that level since probably maybe a Dennis Allen team, 2013, 14, something like that. It's just so unusual, particularly with the young group, to be that well coordinated and airtight and tied together. Then the hitting I mentioned, and then just the mobility at the front. I know everyone, Eagles fans certainly listening, know we had the 4-man rush, and that was really effective. Just what they could do to change the numbers in the front. No one else could match that. No one else has a move linebacker at the moment in the league the same way the Eagles do with Zach Bourne, where you have a true one-on-one pass rushing threat, a hard edge setter, a guy who can play off the ball, a guy who can drop into coverage from on the ball. It's an advantage that just no one else can have. It's why, Johnny, I know you know this, I was from week 8 being like, this is the defensive player of the year. This guy has changed the structure of a defense after they played the Saints. Well, whilst they played the Saints, I should say, they overhauled the structure. And what was that, week 3, week 2, something like that? The Saints are club. I know everyone knows that the Saints stunk last season. Remember, they were clubbing everyone over the head for like 2 weeks. People were like, wow, Kubiak might go get a head coaching gig. Is Derek Carr back? All that stuff. And they just annihilated them immediately. Changed the structure of the defense, and it was just the best defense by far in the league after that.
Yeah, man. I read your Zach Bourne piece, and I mean, listeners will laugh, but I've gone on about Zach Bourne forever, basically. One of my favorite things to do is to tweet the quote out that I put in the week 1 Eagles-Packers defense. And I was like, is it too soon to say they need to sign him now? Like, it's been 1 week, but it was just so obvious it was going to work. It was so obvious that what he was going to do was going to work. And I think it's fascinating that they added someone similar to an extent in Campbell as well, as if they're just like doubling down on it. Like, one of the things I've heard you spoke about, Ollie, which I love, is that you spoke about how everyone's going on about back 7 rotation these days in the NFL, like how you move your safeties and stuff. And what the Eagles do is it's all front rotation. It's like doing the 2 things at once is so difficult for offensive guys to keep up, because I think the thing about post safety rotation is it's sort of not predictable, but you have to run quite far. This sounds really basic. I know it's one of my most basic things with Fangio. Why do you rotate from 2 high rather than single high? Because you have to run backwards. Like, it's hard. Whereas when you rotate the front, you can do it instantly. Like, the opposing offenses would be literally about to snap the ball, and the Eagles have completely changed the front. And you can see offensive linemen like, well, crap, I was meant to be blocking him, and they've changed a split set. And I think that's so underrated around the league, and whether that's going to be something that more teams are going to try and do. Because if you're running a system where, especially if you're running like a man blocking system and you're expected to block someone, like you have plays where the Eagles change legitimately a second before the snap of the football, and the entire offensive line has got to suddenly shift. And I think the Eagles have still just about got enough to do it. I know they've lost, obviously, a lot of talent this year. I don't think Sweat was the best at that stuff anyway. And I think they've gained maybe a couple of others. I know they've lost Milton Williams, but I don't see why that should slow down. I think as long as you've got Carter, who can just do everything at an extremely high level, and you've got Bourne there, and you've even added someone in Campbell who can maybe give you something else as well. Like, I think it's pretty scary, but I think that's something the Eagles did really well that wasn't covered enough. And I know you did cover it very well, but it wasn't just... I think everyone just wants to talk about safety rotation with Fangio because it's so easy to go, yeah, too high, and then rotation at the back end. I think it got ignored that the stuff they were doing at the front was quite different to what maybe some of the other guys that were doing around the league at the time.
It was. I mean, yeah, you mentioned there's only so many ways you can go from a 2-to-1 rotation. And even if you're doing like some of the spec stuff where it's really wild and it's 2 that becomes 1, that stuff's really hard to do. You're probably going to get crushed over the head by Joe Burrow, as Spags has found out. You know, these guys are really good. These guys play quarterback in the league. Easier, I think, to manipulate the count up front. I think what you're saying, why don't teams do it more, I guess. The stemming where everyone moves, that's just really tough to do.
Yeah.
To get everyone lined up, and to move to the exact right point, it's just really difficult. If it was, I've asked this to guys tons of times in the league, like, why do you guys just do this all the time? Like, this just seems like the best way to disrupt the blocking mechanics constantly. They're like, it's impossible. One guy moves, 3 inches, one guy moves 12 inches, all of a sudden we're offset. They can, if they know we're going to do it every time, pause the play. The offense gets to choose when to snap the ball, right? And they can reset how they want. So that is tough. What teams are doing more and more is just post-snap stemming. So they all know where they're supposed to be, and they lay the front of the... If you just picture the front and freeze frame the front, it looks like everyone's moved over a gap. You just do it post-snap. Or the post-snap bare front stuff is this too of, we're going to be slightly lighter on the field, but we'll get to a bare front by blitzing a single safety, single linebacker, whatever it is. So when we freeze the frame, it looks like we're in a bare front to begin with because we pinched everyone down and we slipped someone to the edge, but we didn't line up in bare. So we could keep some speed in the field. Where the Eagles, I thought, found the cheat code, and it was not just them. The Bengals were doing this for 2 or 3 seasons with Jermaine Pratt until he just was completely cooked last season, is just having one guy who's the move guy. And it saves you having to have everyone move around and all that communication, and you all know he's going before he goes anyway, right? So it's like you lose some of the concern of, will everyone be in the right spots if everyone moves on a string. Against the Saints, they did all pick up and all move, and they stemmed a bunch, and they did stem throughout the season, but not quite to like a Belichick 03-04 degree. It was like, Zach's gonna go, and Zach will know when to go based on what's happening in the offensive backfield. And we just have a guy, most teams just don't have a guy who can hang in coverage and play on the edge and be a legit threat if it's play action to rush the passer, and be able to blitz from depth, and be able to turn and run in coverage, and be able to turn and run from the line. It's just, you run out of things that he can do. It's like he can just do everything at a really, really high level. It gives you a level of front flexibility that no one else has. You go look around the top linebackers in the league. There aren't that many. And even the ones who were the best, Fred Warner. Fred Warner could not go and hang on the edge in the NFL and play against a heavy front. He just can't do it. So they found an advantage and weaponized it to a degree that was just awesome to watch.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too, just the evolution of Fangio even throughout the season. Like, I remember watching the week 1 game back.
It was weird.
Watching broadcast of games is, I mean, obviously we're finding out what happens in the moment, but it's like I have no idea what's going on schematically sometimes. But going back and watching it, I was like, I have never seen Fangio run so much like spot drop zone coverage as he did like the first couple weeks of the season, and it was really weird. And then he just went from like transitioning into cover 3 match to running quarters at the highest rate he's run it in his whole career. And it was strange just to see him spinning the dials because everybody thinks of Fangio as the quarters guy, but really he was like the cover 3 match guy more so than quarters guy. And I think that's what sticks because, I mean, I obviously ran it a lot and the too high to start with, and that's what people think of him as. But last year it was really so much quarters coverage. And I'm curious if that was because the Eagles had 2 outside corners that they could just totally trust on an island, like Quinyon Mitchell, Darius Slay, you're on your own, and we're going to focus so much on these crossing routes and things over the middle of the field. I'm curious how that maybe will change this year with Slay gone. You're going to have somebody that maybe you don't trust nearly as much at one of your boundary cornerback positions. What do you think Fangio's counter to that's going to be, how do you think the defense will adjust with all the new secondary pieces this year?
I don't know. Fangio knows way more than me, and he'll probably figure something out, and I'm excited to find out. I think when you run that level of quarters, it's less like I have trust in my secondary. It's like I get to crush everyone up front with my front. So I'll just buy myself some time on the back end. His thing has always been less so like, what is the coverage palette? What are the percentages? Does everything just have so many different levels in it? Even if it looks that, if you can go and get the percentage of like, hey, we ran 25% three match and 40% quarters coverage, like what are the contours of each coverage? What are the different rotations? Can I just make sure there's like 4 or 5 levels where most defenses wind up being split into 3 or 4 essentially. That's kind of where his real genius shines. So I'm sure that will stay the same. The question will just be, can they do the same with the front? It's funny you mentioned week 1. Zach Bourne in that week 1 game, he's playing as what they call an apex cover down, right? He's like really in an overhang slot. Yeah. It's like they were trying to run a college defense at the pro level. And then by like week 3, they're like, you know what? That was kind of a silly idea. Let's maybe, we got Zach as an edge defender to move him off ball. Now we're playing him as basically a big nickel player. Let's maybe move him inside. That would make some sense. And you can only really get away with that if we're backing the shell up slightly to give ourselves some depth, particularly at the nickel spot, which then allows you to play more of the quarter. So I think it's more front to back. And it's just what they can get away with the front. And if it's just as dominant as it was before, he can run the exact same defense on the back end. If the front isn't the same and he's got to put more investment and resources in fitting the run in particular, then he's going to have to figure out what he wants to do on the back end. He can still run quarters, right, and fit it from quarters if he trusts the safeties to do that. Otherwise, he's going to have to become more, as you mentioned, the 3-match guy to get an extra body down there.
Yeah, I think the Ajomo, or the Milton Williams to Ajomo, and then the Ty Robinson to Ajomo role is going to be massive next year. Ajomo looked very good in limited snaps, but there's a big difference in sports when you're coming in at certain points of the game rather than being the guy. And Milton Williams, obviously, look at the paycheck he got, was very productive for the Eagles. Although sometimes I didn't think he was the greatest run defender of all time, so I think the Eagles may not lose as much there. But it's interesting the way you described it, going front to back rather than back to front. I think a lot of people get that wrong with Fangio. I think there's so much obsession with the Brandon Staley like too high rotation, and it's not really what makes Fangio great. What made the Eagles defense last year so good was their run defense was unbelievable, and they got themselves in so many favorable situations. There were so many times they were third and long, so many times they were second and long. There's only so many things as an offense you can do when you just can't run the ball in early downs.
Yeah,
and Staley never figured out as a defensive
yeah, exactly.
No,
it's the total opposite. The total opposite. The Staley defense was wrecked because their their yards before contact and stuff as a defense was appalling. The amount of times that teams were just picking up 4 or 5 before anyone was even touching the run was so different to what Fangio did last year. So different.
Yeah, same way with, you mentioned Staley. Like people know the light box theory. That was his thing. We're going to tempt them to run the ball, then we'll sit on the run. We're going to have a 6-man wall. That light box only works if the players aren't light. Like you look at those Georgia defenses, those guys are basing this theory on. They had, you guys drafted them all, you know them. They had behemoths up front, right? It's like it's a light box by count. The weight size is probably the same as it used to be when we put a safety in there because we got the biggest guys on earth lining up in the middle of the formation. Same thing with the Eagles. Those guys are big. They rolled Jordan Davis out there. They rolled Jalen Carter. When Zach Bourne and Kobe Dean there, they hit like old school linebackers. It's big bodies in there to be able to do it. Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned the front to back or back to front stuff. I understand fans are interested in the coverage and the rotations. All these coaches only care about the run game. Everything else is like, we'll get to that when we get to it. All they care about is integrity and the fit. That's all they care about. Then they start getting interested in the rotational stuff.
It's funny the evolution, and it's cyclical, but we went from like the running game doesn't matter and the pass game is hyper efficient, and now and the pass game's still generally more efficient than the running game, but being able to run the ball and stop the run, I feel like has become so much more important, especially as teams have started to lighten out the box. It's like, I need to be able to run you out of that. And for defenses, it's, I need to be able to stop you from a light box. And I don't feel like football discourse is quite caught up to that yet, but it's definitely the focal point of a lot of these defenses and offenses. And I mean, you can see that even play out in the Super Bowl, that the Chiefs wanted to load up and stop the run, and now all of a sudden it opened up things for the Eagles passing game, and it all plays together. But it's funny just to see it cycle over years covering the league and watching the league.
It's less so to me like the two high shell. People say all the time, "Oh, they're in a two." You run them out the two high shell. It's like, well, the run fit doesn't have someone not in it because they're in a two high shell. It's structured in a way. People spike the A gap with a safety. He arrives at the line of scrimmage at the same time and nose hits the ball because they fly him downhill. You go watch some of those old Cardinals team fit the run. Buda Baker is into the backfield before the line is off the line of scrimmage. They're fitting the run from a two high shell with a safety. It's just harder to get to all your fun rotations, to get to all your fun mugged fronts. You gotta be in a certain down and distance. You gotta have space. If you're paranoid that you're gonna bust the fit because you're rolling the nickel into a safety spot in a two high shell, and he's got a spy for the run game, and he's not very good at it. Well, then I'm going to make them paranoid and run all the time, right? So then they can't get to the fun rotation stuff. They'll be static. It's all just, how can we make these guys static is what these teams are trying to do. It's not so much like run them out of a two-eye shell necessarily. It's the quirky stuff from those shells. It's the quirky rotations. Even if it's a 2 becomes 1, and so it is a single eye shell. It's like we just want them to be static for us at all times. That's all these guys are trying to get to. And not just that, it's less so about how often can we run the ball, how well can we run the ball. It's just triggering play action. It's what these guys want to get to. All these guys running offenses in the league now is how do we get to play action? And I know this giant discourse about is running the ball important and all that stuff.
Massive discourse,
yeah. It's not about is it important, the yards and all that stuff. It's does it all look the same? Do they believe we're going to run it? It's about belief. The linebackers only bite if they believe you may well do it. So it's just about, can you run the ball from the same formation? Does it look the same? Does it smell the same? Does it sound the same? Do you have all the same cues? Is there the same hand on the ground? All that stuff. Is the pre-snap protocol the exact same? So we can trigger the play action shot. We're not running the ball for running the ball's sake beyond trying to get you to stay static. Once you're static, we do the play action stuff. You're biting it. We hit home runs.
Yeah, I love that we have the same discourse on things. I used to hate those stats, and some of it has come from PFF, and PFF do some very, very good work, but a lot of it is these numbers that just when you put out there on a spreadsheet don't always back it up. Like, actually, we've looked at all the play action, and it turns out running the ball doesn't matter for play action. You're like, well, I bet if you ask a lot of coaches, they'd significantly disagree with you, just because the numbers like may not reflect it. Yeah.
Wouldn't the most efficient thing then being like a play action from empty would then be the most efficient play in the sport?
Exactly.
Because the running ball doesn't matter unless it's like a fake quarterback draw and then we throw the ball, which would be tasty, I guess.
Yeah,
just the Tim Tebow jump pass.
Yeah.
Bring
just
it back.
Go and ask, just go and ask coaches, like, if you're playing a team that runs the ball really well, you're going to worry about play action more.
That's where Staley, to his credit, gave the great quote of, like, it's a physical game. It hurts to stop the run. It really hurts. Particularly when we have to have lighter bodies on the field and my safety's coming down, he's getting pinned by Mailata. You think that's fun to have happened 9 times in a row? You think he might be a little slow in his rotation after getting decked by Mailata 6 times? Like, yeah, it matters.
Right, before we transition to very quickly, because I know I don't want to keep you too long. I know you said you got forever because you could talk about this stuff all day, but there is a limit to how much time until I feel bad. So I don't want to ask you about every single Eagles player because it will drive you insane. I don't want to ask you about Quinyon Mitchell because you're going to say he's unbelievable. Fine. I do want to know if someone watches around the league because I think there are less, and this is someone I sadly don't give a time to watch as much as you do around the league. So 2 guys I wanted to ask about. Firstly, Jalen Carter. To me, he's like an absolute superstar, a god tier already. But I'm interested as someone who watches other guys on the defensive line. And then secondly, Cooper DeJean, because I don't see a ton of like fantastic nickels these days. I think nickels are a really hard position to nail. And it felt like Cooper DeJean just like sort of walked into the lineup as a rookie and was like, yeah, I'm awesome. This is exactly like the perfect fit for me. And I went a bit mad, people going like, oh, now Slay's gone, we'll just move him outside because he'll play more. And I find that such a ridiculous way of thinking. People have started talking about playing him at safety because I think Fangio gave a random quote about, Cooper he can play there. And I'm like, well, yeah, but anyone can play there. But do you actually want him there? So I guess just in a very simple, non-schematic, boring term, is Carter already god tier? And then secondly, like DeJean's role, how do you envisage that over time? Are you like me in that he's already established an extremely solid floor and you leave him there? Or do you think there is more sort of ways you could use him moving forward?
I want to tack on a part to the DeJean question because Jonny and I talked about this some during the season. Who is more valuable to the Eagles offense? Is it Quinyon Mitchell, who's your lockdown boundary corner, or is it Cooper DeJean, who plays in the slot? Because that's something we talked about a lot.
DeJean is more valuable. I have a slot defender. Jonny just mentioned it. There's so few great nickels in the NFL, and everyone's a nickel now. I know you're saying Quinyon Mitchell's a boundary corner. All these guys play inside. You play against a condensed formation, you're a slot corner, whether you like it or not. There's a ton of grass out there. Every option route is available to you. They know where they're going with the ball. You don't. Good luck. No one anymore is Richard Sherman, where the sideline is my friend and I'm defending like a tiny section of grass. Just doesn't exist anymore. All these guys have to play in the slot. Plus, you got more responsibilities in the run fit. Plus, you got more responsibility in the pressure game. So finding a great slot is the great equalizer, right? It's why even the Ravens with someone like Kyle Hamilton, who's probably the best safety in the league right now, they're like, well, we would rather have him down there. And then our defense falls apart. It's like, well, we're going to have to move him back. Our defense is falling apart. No one can talk to one another. Let's put Kyle back there. He can open his mouth. So everyone is trying to get their best asset on defense in that position, the same way they're trying to get their best player as close to the interior as possible, whether that's pre-snap, we got a 3-tech, or post-snap, we're stunting everyone inside. We want our best players attacking the middle of the line of scrimmage. All our pressure packages, we got a great blitzing linebacker. We attack the A-gap or the B-gap. We don't send these guys from the edge. What's the point? Everyone wants to get towards the middle line of scrimmage, and everyone wants to have their best player playing in the overhang role so they can have better connectivity between the 3 tiers of the defense. So that, to me, that is where I would keep DeJean, because it's so beyond belief to have a rookie come in that defense. And I know they weren't running as much as they have done in the past, but to execute that way in that defense, I don't know why I would move him, and it's just so much more valuable to me. You can find turn and run corners, and if you've got a turn and run corner with safety help, why would we put a better player out there when the guy's going to get isolated and attack the most is Cooper DeJean? So if we got a great one, we leave him there. Will be my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think what Jonny and I ended up coming to was that Cooper DeJean was the more valuable player, but Quinyon Mitchell was the quote unquote better player.
That's the correct take.
Yeah. All right. And then just quickly before we move on very briefly to NFL stuff, you watch a lot of NFL players. Jalen Carter, like already unblockable.
Yeah. I mean, what do I say? Yeah, he's as good as it. Not in the Donald tier of, put a jacket on him right away. Probably less so in the run game, but I mean, in the pass game, just
because I just don't get how he moves. Like he moves like he's not meant to move to me. I watch him, and I'm like, I don't think players that big are meant to move like him. Like
the thing that's really telling too. Jonny mentioned before, I wrote this really long piece about the best blitzing linebackers in the NFL. Yeah. And so I watched a ton of the Eagles, and it's about how the front is tied to the blitzer, essentially. They were comfortably, I can say this because it's an Eagles show, the best defense of the league by far. They were the best defense far at like everything, but in this even like tiny micro thing where you can go and find the Commanders are really good at it, even though it wasn't a great defense, how well the front, the first level was tied to the second level in the blitz game. Watching that, seeing how scared everyone was of Jalen Carter, told you immediately he has gone to God tier. Even when they got stuff wrong, and Carter got a lot of stuff wrong, by the way, off the snap, everyone is so panicked that he just exists on Earth that it opens up a ton of space for everyone else in a way that you just don't see with a ton of interior plays in the league.
One of these days, he's going to catch one of those spikes, too. He's going to intercept a spike. I don't know when, but he's eventually going to get one.
Right, okay, Shane. I don't want to keep you too long on it. I know I've said it. So I do want to ask you, because basically I want you to give me homework. So you mentioned, and this is genuinely not a lie, I have a document up that is about 96 pages long that I update. Not with like basic stuff. If I read something really good and I'm like, I need to note this down. And if you post a long form, well, it's there. So I've got a current heading, like 2-man blitz. And my big takeaway from that was like any 3-down linebacker now has to offer something as a blitzer. You said that early on in the article, and that's like my big takeaway that I'm going to remember when I scout moving forward. And I also want to know how much
good job you covered the Eagles with Nakobe Dean, Zach
tell me about it.
Campbell. Yeah, it seems
I know
like they
how
know
much. I know how much you talk about the linebackers as well, and how painful it was to watch some of the Eagle defenses the past 10 years where they just ignored linebacker. But I do want to ask you, like, big picture, because as I said, almost like set my listeners' homework as well as me and Shane. You watch more big picture stuff, so I'm sort of open to interpretation. You can talk about whatever you want in terms of like offensive schematic trends. I know you've already spoke about empty, and I've read your Bryce Young piece, which is one reason why I like Bryce Young more. I think it's so interesting to look at how you spoke about how the offense they built, because I remember watching the Panthers play the Eagles last year, and I thought Bryce Young was exceptional, and they're actually one of the best offenses at getting after the Fangio defense actually last year was Bryce Young. And that Panthers offense. So you can mention empty if you want, but you have already brought it up. Like big picture on schematic trends, where do you think the league is going? Is there anything on like sort of broader league trends, where you think, it doesn't have to be where the Eagles will move to, by the way. It could be teams around the league, it could be where other teams are going. I think in a very simplistic term, Shay mentioned we've gone through this cyclical cycle and now it's like, oh, we're back to running the football. But that's very basic. Like any teams to watch out for, any coordinators to watch out for, I'm basically giving you free reign. Like if you were to set us homework and say what's going to happen over the next couple of years, what should we look out for on the offensive side of the ball?
The big things are what everyone is trying to do, and this does touch on the Eagles, is run some version of a power spread offense. Is how can we fuse together power running principles, gap scheme runs, guys pulling and moving? Can we get to an all five can pull offense, which is just really tough to defend, whilst keeping the spread element to the passing game? And it takes on a whole bunch of different forms, right? It could just be that we've got such a dynamic running threat quarterback. Our tight end is an unbelievable split zone blocker. We can get more gap elements into our game. We've got extra hats and they don't. Or it can be like the Bills, who had the extra eligible linemen constantly last year. My beloved Alec Anderson, just the god of the read optional, essentially, the patron saint, where they're rolling an extra lineman out all the time. It could be a H-back. It could be back to the old McVay things of Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp and having condensed sets where your receiver becomes an auxiliary lineman for you for like 50-60% of the snaps. So that is kind of where everyone is trying to get to. The Cardinals, I think, have the best run game version of this. The Bucs did some really interesting stuff under Liam Cohen. I'm sure he'll take it to Jacksonville too. Yeah. I'm a fan of the extra lineman one just because I'm kind of like old school chewing tobacco defensive coach. It's fun to see people roll an extra lineman out there. And this again is all for how do we best trigger play action and how do we get everyone to be static? The best way we can do this, we roll in the chunky guy. Here comes Alec Anderson. People think we're running the ball. They were the most efficient play action team in the league last year with an extra lineman on the field. That's just really unusual to think of. They also have Josh Allen, really helpful. But that to me is the main thing where people are going. You pair that with, okay, and how do we get to empty? Okay, and can we ramp up the tempo to keep these guys static? And then it's how do you synthesize all that into one offense? It's really difficult to not have this kind of like accordion offense, which the Bengals always end up with, which is like our run game does not match our passing game. Now we're really siloed. Everyone knows what we're going to run. So trying to fit all that together is just really difficult. It's why I thought the Cardinals, Bucs, and Bills was probably the most impressive example of getting all those elements into one offense last season.
That's really cool. Shane, anything you wanted to add on that sort of broader picture?
No, that's awesome. Really insightful. And I know you talked some about the defense, which is trying to get the late front moving and build everything from the trenches out. But is there anything else you wanted to shout out on the defense trends that you're kind of looking for?
Defensive trends would be mostly like everyone's trying to get to non-traditional Tampa, I guess. It's like, how can we get to Tampa in the wackiest ways possible? All these guys, it's all they want to do now. How many different pull runners can we get? The one that they've all been talking about in coaching clinics this offseason is called this compressed three, where you essentially have three guys within the width of the hashes, which makes the middle of the field really, really narrow, but is a massive level of exposed distance to the perimeter. And essentially daring guys, can you beat us outside the numbers down the field? Now, I watch these clinics. I go, these guys are really smart. They're all talking about it. That's interesting. And then I'm like, well, if I'm facing Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow, I don't think I'd want to leave outside the numbers exposed in that sense. So I'm cautious on whether they'll really try that. The Cardinals, again,
I was going to mention the Cardinals last year. You love Jonathan Gannon, don't you?
Just not say particularly.
On the Eagles pod. Do you not? You always bring up the Cardinals about how they're a very interesting... they're a wacky team.
I like Nick Rollis, who was the linebackers coach in Philadelphia and is their DC now. I like him a lot. Gannon was never really my flavor. So enough. Passive. I really admired what they did last season, which is like our team stinks.
That's what I meant. Last year they were very interesting, weren't they?
They were very interesting. I think they'll probably be the most innovative defense in the league next season, or he may just roll back to his old ways and I'll be crying, on my bed week 6. So non-traditional Tampa would be the thing. Everything that's happening in the front, I'm sure you guys are covered constantly with different looks and re-blitzes and overload fronts and all that stuff, and just how much movement you can get in some of these mug situations, finding any way you can to say, we're going to dictate the terms to you. We will set the protection, then we will tee off and attack the protection. There's only so many protections. If we can decide it as a defense, it just gives us back the advantage when you guys know where the ball is going. At least we know the protection and we can attack it. And then kind of the big macro trend, which is not really fitting with the Eagles, I guess, is the inverting the downs principle, which all these top guys have got to, whether it's Flores, Vance Joseph, you mentioned the Cardinals there, Jonny, It used to be, and you guys saw it in the Super Bowl better than anyone, we will, play in our base on early downs. We'll send a 4-man rush when we have to. Our fun down for us as defensive coaches is we'll blitz. We'll send the heat on third and medium,
third
and long or whatever.
Yeah.
And now it's just completely inverted. You go look at the blitz rate. Even the Steelers, who are like always 12 years behind everyone else, they're like, okay, we get it now. You send heat on early downs because you want to get a negative play. It's how you kill drives. So you send heat on early downs and you back up the 4-man rushes for third downs. We get third and long. Let's cloud up the coverages and let's go have some fun with the 4 guys. That is what all these teams are trying to get to now. It's obviously difficult to do. You need the talent, but that's kind of the main macro trend that I don't think anyone really is talking about in football. People still think third down is like where they send the heat, and it's just completely flipped on its head now. Yeah,
that's awesome. There was something you said there that I was going to bring up. That's what I was going to say. I was starting to look at, you call it non-traditional tampers, which I saw that. I think it was Match Quarters who did something on it, and NTTs, and I was like, what the hell is an NTT? And I think I've just put 2 and 2 together, and I think that's what he was on about, which really makes me feel really smart. I remember watching it and seeing NTTs in his title and being like, I'm obviously Match Quarters has gone too far. I have no idea what an NTT is. He speaks a lot about free high defenses. I think a lot of people talk about free safety defenses. I think maybe that misses the point. I don't think it has to necessarily be free safeties at all times, but it's this idea of like free high defenses, isn't it? That's the thing that I'm sort of looking out for. And I think you mentioned that Gannon done it a lot. And there's this really strange like clips with the Cardinals last year where you've got like safeties just like 2 yards apart from each other. They're really, really narrow. And I remember watching, I know you spoke about it before, and I've always wondered whether that is possible. And I've also wondered like, the Jeans feels like a really good fit for that as well, because he can so effortlessly drop back. To bring him back to the Eagles, if you wanted to bring some of that stuff, you potentially could, but it feels like one of those things that sounds cool in a clinic, and it might be really hard in principle to actually make work, and you might not want to do it if you're already really talented on defense anyway. It's a bit like the Kellen Moore chat. Maybe you don't need to make things this
I was about
hard.
to ask, did we just go from criticizing Kellen Moore for being an ego offensive coordinator and trying to turn Vic Fangio into one?
Yeah. I'm not saying it's a good idea. I think it's ego coaching. When I watch the clinics, I'm like, well, because a lot of what they're trying to do is go, well, these guys now are designing their offense. They think we're playing a too deep shell. They're trying to punch us through the middle, particularly with like a fast ripping guy. That's what a lot of offenses are doing. You get someone tight to the formation and you just rip them through the 2-eye shell. Those guys panic. We punch right underneath, essentially, and try and get a runaway. Because if you drag the, say, field side safety with the guy who's ripping through the hole, that clears a giant void on the other side, right? We run a deep cross behind it, a dig. There should be space to run into behind it. So they're saying, well, let's compact the middle of the field. And when those guys turn around from play action, they go, oh, God, there's literally no space to throw the ball. I look at that and I go, well, if you just ran like a 1 lurk and put 2 guys there, it's the exact same thing that you need with an investment of 2 players instead of 3 players. So I'm cautious about it, but it's, the Vikings have done this a lot. I think if you can tie it to sending pressure, which is where it's not so necessary for the Eagles, they just don't need to send 6 guys in the pressure every time. But if you send in 6 with a constricted 3, it's like so much space at the perimeter. But you just think of the panic stations. If you're facing Brian Flores, you don't know what's happening in the front, and then you look up and try to throw the ball. There's 3 guys where the throw is designed to go. All of a sudden, they're in real trouble. So it's something to track and watch. I'm cautious on whether teams will really invest in it.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the clip. I'm pretty sure it was Cody Alexander who did a video last year. I'm pretty sure it was the Cardinals, and there was literally 3 safeties next to each other, and Buda Baker was the middle safety. Yeah. And basically, they stayed 2 deep, and Buda Baker was in the backfield on a run play like instantly. And you mentioned like that you've got 3 safeties deep, but you're not really 3 deep against the run, because Buda Baker was, I think it was a tackle for loss. He was there so quickly downhill. But as you said, do you need to do that? Or are you just wasting 2 guys then when you don't actually necessarily need to do it? But I will keep an eye out for it. That's one of the things I thought you would talk about. And yeah, you mentioned empty early on. I massively keep taking an eye on empty this year as well. I don't think that is a gimmick. I think that's been around obviously for a long time. And you mentioned pistol, Ollie. Genuinely, you were one of the first people to write about the pistol. God, I'm going to sound old now. You probably wrote about the pistol about 5 years ago, didn't you?
I know.
I've been reading that long, but I remember the pistol article, and every time I think a lot of teams are still behind it as well. Right, I think, Shane, I've taken up enough time and I've asked enough questions and got enough homework to do. And I'm glad you mentioned the Jags, because I watch a lot of Jags for my sins, because my best mate's a Jags fan. So I always keep an eye on them closely. So I'm glad they've got Liam Cohen to keep an eye on. Is there anything, Shane, that you wanted to grill on, or should we leave him there to get ready for his Oasis gig tomorrow?
Yeah, man, watching the Jags the last couple of years has just made me sad. I'm hoping it makes me
Dougie.
less.
I don't know if I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever seen a coach actively quit while still having the job that way before. It was absolutely bizarre. Just giving up on his team mid-season and not leaving the building. It was just so strange.
He basically did that in Philly in 2020 as well. It basically happened twice. I feel like Doug Peterson is like my grandpa, and he's just like, you know what? I'm done. We're good. I don't know. I love Doug, and I thought he was going to be a great hire for Jacksonville, and sad that didn't work out. Last thing I want to ask you about, you mentioned the Vikings with the Brian Flores defense with the high max pressure rates, high max drop rates. What are your thoughts on that offense or on that defense? Is that something that's sustainable? Have teams started to figure that out? Can you build a whole defense out of that? Because it's a lot of fun to watch, but I do wonder about it.
Yeah, he did it. I mean, I've never seen someone pressure that way with that kind of split defense the way he had it, where he truly segmented his defense in three in a way no one has ever done in the pro game, which is, this is the pressure group, this one or two guys stand in the middle, this is the deep coverage. We are blending Tampa 2 with all-out pressure. No one's ever done that before, and I think it took guys like 6 weeks to even figure out what was happening. They were just like, what has Brian done now? It's really strange. The thing about Flores that kind of pushes him to a different level, beyond the innovation, the creativity, the fact he is one of the only guys, we use the word innovation all the time in football and no one innovates anything. He truly is one of like the only artists who comes with brand new concepts no one's ever even thought about before, mostly because all that stuff is stuff you're told actively not to do. And he goes, I'll give it a try. And then it works really effectively. What he did last season was they changed, the year before they ran a re-blitz structure, essentially put O-lineman and protector in conflict, 2-over-1, whoever you pop to, you're dropping into coverage, the other guy's going. Free shot every single time. What happened at kind of the middle span of the year where the defense fell away was offenses started to realize, well, if we know how to set the conflict right, if we know we can get one guy to drop out, let's get the guy we want to drop out. We'll just set to the bad player, and then we'll run a drag route underneath with our best player on their worst guy in coverage. And so teams are starting to crack the code. So he changes back and says, I'm just sending the house every time. You mentioned the max split stuff. I'll just send everyone. Let these guys try and figure this out. Again, people spend 8 weeks going, oh, God, what are we doing now? Brian's on to another one. And so then teams start trying to figure that out, right? Keeping extra guys in. They get rid of the ball earlier. They realize now, well, he's playing split field coverage with a max pressure. Why has no one ever done that before? Brian starts to find out. People start ripping him apart in the middle of the field. So then he changes back to the re-blitz structure, where everyone's reading again. Everyone's like, oh, he's doing it again. Oh, now everything's on. Then you get to like week 10, 11. Everything's on the table, right? He can go back to everyone goes, or we read it out as we want. And just no one knew what to do with him anymore. So I don't know how much meat is left on that bone. I do know the ability to toggle between the two is impossible for anyone to figure out. And in fact, the best example of it was, if you remember the pick six he got on Rodgers, it was in London actually, Jonny, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think it was.
I think it was Van Ginkel. That was the first week he went back to the re-blitz, and people laughed at Rodgers, understandably, because it's Aaron Rodgers. But he threw it because he thought everyone was coming, because that's what they've been doing, and he returned to the re-blitz structure and got a pick six off it. So you to be able to most teams don't have that level of staff and player continuity to change the mechanics of your pressure package week by week based on the opposition, based on whatever lineman you want to expose, based on the preferences of the quarterback. No one else can really do that because it's just so difficult to coach, and the fact you can get those guys to do it is just like mind-bending to me. So I think that general what you were saying before about can you run a max blitz structure with two safeties deep, I don't think that's sustainable. I just think the history of football has told us that. If everyone knows you're setting up in that, you just got a massive void in the middle of the field. These guys will eat you alive in the NFL. Your ability to change your blitz structure every week, not the paths, but the mechanics of the paths, no one else has that in their bag right now. And so I just don't know how teams are going to cope with that.
All right, awesome.
There you go.
It's been a lot of fun to watch. I'm just not sure how far you can push it, but it's one of my favorite defenses to watch for sure. Obviously behind the Eagles, but I think that's all I have. Jonny, anything else you want to get out there?
No, I knew it'd be a long one because I know what Ollie's like. As I said, if anyone listening has listened to the Read Optional pod, this is actually quite short for Ollie. He's like, wow, done in under 90, barely getting started. But yeah, no, I've wanted to do this for a long time, so I've messaged Ollie a few times. I know it's nice having a Brit as well. Probably one reason why I've always followed you is just a Brit doing the schematic stuff you do. I knew about your career, but I didn't realize you lived in the States for that long as well. But you're back home now, so I'm going to count it as a win for the Brits. But yeah, no, seriously, massive thank you. If we can get you on any other off season, to do a similar thing. I think it's just good because sometimes me and Shane get bogged into the weekly discussion of the Eagles, and I always like getting guests on that have like a broader perspective, especially on the league as well. But also sometimes when you get bogged down in the week to week, you forget to like. It's nice to have someone come on and mention like, oh yeah, Kellen Moore. And I was like, oh god, yeah, I forgot I hated Kellen Moore for like 8 weeks. Like I forgot the Eagles won the Super Bowl, so we just sort of it was perfect by the end of it. And then you actually think back and you're like, yeah, they did sort of suck for like 6 to 8 weeks. It's quite nice to revisit things. So yeah. I know Shane will ask this, so I'll leave you, Ollie. But anything you want to plug before you get out of here? I've already mentioned the read optional, but anything else you got?
No,
you got upcoming? Anything else?
Anything else upcoming? I'm doing something on Rex Ryan that I need to finish, so saying it publicly means I should probably go and finish it. Yeah, basically where the league is at defensively now is all from Rex, and he doesn't get any credit, and we should carve a Mount Rushmore of defensive minds with Rex right atop it. So now I'm going to have to go finish that. Thanks, Jonny.
All right. Well, Ollie, thanks so much for joining us. This was awesome, and I don't know why Johnny's trying to hustle you out of here. I'd stay and talk for another 30 or 45 minutes, but Johnny's like, nope, we got to end this thing. So I guess we'll acquiesce to my co-host's wishes, but thank you so much for joining us. And if you guys have enjoyed this conversation, go check out Ollie's work at the Read Optional Substack, written content podcasts, lots of stuff there that you guys can go check out and get a guy that's smarter than I am, at least with the film stuff, and looks around the league a little bit more than I do as well. So go check out all of his work. Ollie, thanks so much for joining us. We would love to have you back on in the future. Thanks for everybody who tuned in live here, for all of you listening on the podcast feed. We really appreciate it, and we will catch you guys next time.